Hey team, Mr. Lackey here. So you missed live class this week. We have a pretty short wrap-up video here, but I do want you to go ahead and you'll get a little grade for watching through this to see some of the stuff that you missed. First thing we're going to do is I did a short little recap. So many of you guys in your seen and unseen mammal, a ton of people said they'd never seen a snowshoe hare, and it got me thinking. And I thought, I've seen a lot of rabbits, but do I actually really know the difference between the snowshoe hare and the eastern cottontail? Because the snowshoe hare is the white rabbit, and I don't remember actually seeing those, right? So I put together a little info for you guys about those. So if we look here, rabbit versus a hare. So there's two species of basically bunnies that we can see here in Ohio, or rabbits. And they are the eastern cottontail and the snowshoe hare. So I just wanted to do a little research to help myself out, and I figure I'd share it with you guys too. The key idea here is actually that snowshoe hare is actually, of course, only white during winter. That makes sense in terms of evolution. So when it gets cold outside, it turns white to blend in with the snow and hide from predators, right? A little bit more, if you see a rabbit and you're wondering which one it is. So the eastern cottontail, it makes sense it's called a cottontail because it has a distinct white tail. So if you see a brown bunny with a white tail, that's the eastern cottontail, right? Because it looks like its tail is a little cotton ball. They also have this kind of light brown coat with these like some white streaks in there. So you can see they have the white tail, a little bit of a white fringe around their belly, and it's kind of like this orangey look over their whole body. They stay brown year round though. So if it's the middle of winter and you see a brown rabbit, it's probably an eastern cottontail because the snowshoe hares have turned white in the winter. They are also smaller. So by comparison, if you were to see two different rabbits and one's much bigger than the other and they look somehow different, the larger one might be the hare, the smaller one might be the eastern cottontail. A lot of people in class said that they have bunny babies in their yard at certain parts of the year. Eastern cottontails, their babies are actually born hairless and their eyes are closed and they're kind of helpless, like they're in the nest for a few days and they can't really move much when they're born. We'll compare that to hares in a second. So, oops, I have the wrong title here. The title here should say, it should say snowshoe hare. I'll fix that later. But so the snowshoe hare. So one thing, if you look at the ears, is that the ears have a darker outline. So if you look at some of these pictures, like this one on the top right, it kind of has this almost black outline. They don't have that distinct tail that stands out as different. Like the cottontail has the white tail. These guys don't. They also have really big hind feet. So this picture on the bottom right shows a nice image of how huge that back foot is. That's actually why they're called snowshoe hare, because a snowshoe is like a giant shoe you wear so you don't fall through the snow. They have giant feet because it helps them stay on top of the snow in the winter. For some, not all of them, but for many animals in the species, their coat does turn white in the winter. You'll also notice I put this picture on the bottom left here of there's a time period where that coat is changing. So if you ever see a rabbit that's like half brown, half white, that tells you it's a snowshoe hare in the middle of its coat changing. Maybe it's turning white or maybe it's turning brown in the spring. But if you see that half and half look, that's a snowshoe hare. Their babies are born more mature. So their babies are born with fur and their eyes open and they can basically walk from the second they're born. They're less helpless than the eastern cottontail babies. The other thing is you're probably less likely to see them. Like if you have rabbit babies in your backyard, they're probably eastern cottontails because these snowshoe hares prefer to have their babies denser in denser forests, deeper in the woods. All right. The other animal I wanted to quickly mention for you guys was the star-nosed mole. So I got a lot of you guys who said you'd never seen a star-nosed mole and you talked about how crazy it looked, and I agree. They're kind of insane. So I just wanted to share some fun facts about those. They tend to live in wet areas underground. So they live underground in something like a marsh, a swamp, a riverbed. They actually are semi-aquatic, meaning they can basically hold their breath really well underwater and they'll hunt underwater. Of course, their distinct feature is that star-shaped nose. So it's star-shaped because around their nose they have these little appendages that are kind of finger-like, and they act very similar to fingers. They have tons and tons of nerve endings, so they're even more sensitive than our hands. So it's basically like having a superpowered hand on the end of their face. They're nearly blind in terms of eyesight. They live underground. And in terms of knowing their environment, they use that appendage on their nose rather than their eyes to quote unquote see what's going on. They also are one of very few mammals that can actually smell underwater. So they do this trick where they blow out a big air bubble and then they suck it back in through their nose, and they are smelling the particles in that air bubble to see if there's food or other creatures around when they're underwater. Just so that you guys can get a little taste of what this thing looks like in action, I have this short video that I'm going to go ahead and play right now for you guys to enjoy about the star-nosed mole.
Perhaps the most impressive nose in the animal kingdom is also the most fantastic because of what surrounds it. The owner lives below ground in a world of perpetual darkness, surrounded by the crawling creatures on which it preys. Down here, eyes and ears are meaningless, and touch is everything. This is the realm of the star-nosed mole. It gets its name from the 22 appendages, or feelers, that surround its nose. Each feeler is covered with thousands of sensory receptors called Eimer's organs that make the star one of the most ultra-sensitive organs of any in the animal kingdom. It's so sensitive it can detect minute particles like a grain of salt buried in a pile of sand. The mole lives on worms, insects, and small fish. The outer tentacles probe for a potential meal. Then the inner sensors determine if the prey is edible. The mole is practically blind. To better see, it presses its feelers to the ground, which transmits a three-dimensional picture of the terrain back to its brain, like a mental sonogram. And when it presses down its feelers, it does it at warp speed. One of its favorite meals, earthworms. For the star-nosed mole, the worm's telltale segments and hooks are a dead giveaway. But to find it, the mole has to touch it. Its amazing ultra-sensitive feelers have rewarded it with yet another meal to be enjoyed in the darkness of its creepy, superpowered world.
Okay, and then the very last thing that I want to share with you is when we were in live class, we also did a Kahoot together, and that Kahoot just reviewed some of the topics we've been doing. So it went over Ohio mammals, It talked for a bit about the types of squirrels, which we did last week, and also talked about stuff from our Rise of Mammals note this week. I'm going to go ahead and post the link for that Kahoot review right here. And once you guys have done that Kahoot review, then you guys are all caught up for the week. I'm not keeping track of whether or not you did the Kahoot review. This is really just something that you should do on your own to understand the things that you should be able to answer by now. Eventually, we will, sometime soon here, have some type of quiz or test over mammals, and those are the types of questions you should be able to answer. All right, thanks for making this up, and depending on what cohort you're in, I'll be seeing you either in person next week or the week after that. Thanks, guys. Bye.